Hi, good morning to all of our Uplift listeners. It is a great delight to be able to share with you during this special time of devotion. Now, some of you are maybe wondering, are you seeing right or is something wrong with your screen? I'm saying to you that you are seeing perfectly. There's nothing wrong with your screen, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with me. Maybe just today we're seeing a little differently. And so I want to spend the next couple of minutes talking and sharing with you on what I'm calling a higher perspective. Right, so you would agree with me that there's not much in this life or in our own lives that we don't have a perspective on. In terms of from what's the best food to what's the best color, we tend to have our own points of view or viewpoints on these particular things or particular issues. And these may very well might have been shaped by our own upbringing, our own circumstances, our culture, and various other factors. Now, whenever we talk about perspective, the word perspective can be easily defined as having a point of view. Now, I must tell you that I live in close proximity to what I believe is one of the most beautiful viewpoints on this island, Barbados, and it's a place called Hackerton's Cliff. And from this viewpoint, you can see the beautiful east coast of the island, how the waves are breaking and such like. But you must agree also that those of us who are standing on the cliff and seeing these beautiful sights will have a very different point of view and viewpoint of what we see from those who are pretty much living below the cliff or living in the valley experiences. Similar to that, I must say that as Christians, very often we only see stuff, we only build perspectives from our valley experiences, from where we are and pretty much what we see. However, there's a higher perspective, but that perspective comes from God. That perspective comes from above, and you must appreciate that because God is seeing from a higher perspective, then He has a better viewpoint of our lives and how we can live our lives and even fix situations in our lives than what we are generally seeing from where we are. Now, take for example, when Elijah goes to the widow, who's getting ready to bake, the last for herself and her son, she had a perspective. But Elijah brought a higher perspective. And so often in Scripture, God gives us a higher perspective on how we should live our lives out for Him. So let's take a look at some of these things. For example, in James chapter 1, James says that when it comes to times of tribulation and testing, he says we should rejoice. I mean, that is a God's perspective, because truly, from our own viewpoint, times of tribulation is not times of rejoicing. I mean, that's where we become afraid. That's where, we retreat. That's where we give up. That's where we hold back. That's where we are not being our best. Yet, the God perspective says, when trials and tribulations come, we should rejoice. And rejoice because they're producing in us something greater, something better. Now, another one, in Matthew chapter 5, Jesus says, love your enemies. Wow. I mean, that is a God perspective. Because from our perspective, from the world's perspective, from the person who's being victimized, There is no place in our point of view or our viewpoint in which we love those who are doing us wrong. Yet, Jesus says, I say to you, love your enemies. In other words, don't return, the hate because they hate you. Don't return their actions, but in other words, treat them, love them, care for them. And I tend to feel that that is the best perspective to have for this life. Now, another one, and many of us know this passage in 1 Samuel 16. When Samuel, God commanded Samuel, hey, to go and look for a new king after, he had decided he was finished with Saul. And when Samuel was looking for this king, he was looking for strong, he was looking for, a soldier type person. But yet God said, hey, I'm not interested in the outward appearance. I'm more interested in the heart. You see, God's perspective is always higher than man's perspective. I'll end on this one, and I think this is one that we should pay close attention to. Jesus says, I say to you, when you forgive, you should forgive 70 times 7. In other words, we should forgive without limit. You see, in God's perspective of forgiveness, there's no limit to which we should get past the wrong and restore the relationships. And so my question for you today is, how are you seeing? So, my question is, which perspective are we going to hold? Are we going to stand on our perspective, which is often a viewpoint from below? Or are we going to stand with Christ, to stand with God, and take the higher perspective, take the viewpoint and point of view from above? You see, God has called us to a higher place, a place where we live above the world standards, a place where we don't live according to men's point of view, but we live according to God's. Now, again, man's point of view is that we ought to stand strong. God's point of view is that we ought to stand from a place of surrender, because it is in our surrender that we are stronger, that we become greater. So today I want to encourage you, maybe take a minute after this devotion and look at life, look at your life, look at, maybe whatever situations you're going through, and encourage yourself today to hold the higher perspective. You see, don't be bothered by what men may think. Right now you may think, I look weird, I look, strange, but here's what. The truth is, I am created in the image of God. I am fearfully and wonderfully made. So that's my higher perspective for today. God bless you.